My name is Oliver. I have a friend named Adrian. We have known each other since college and were always very close. As the years went by, our lives and careers took us in different directions, so we didn't see each other often, but we always stayed in touch through social media. Adrian is currently very successful in the car business. He has always been handsome, and combined with his calm personality, I believe those traits were the key to his success. One day, Adrian messaged me to share some exciting news. He had just bought his third house, located in the suburbs. He invited me to a housewarming party to celebrate. I agreed immediately because it had been a long time since we had caught up in person. The party that night was very cozy. There weren't many guests, just about a dozen people, all old friends or close colleagues. Adrian greeted us with his usual elegance. The highlight of the party was the main course, which he had personally spent hours preparing. The aroma and texture of the meat were very unique. I had never tasted anything like it before, but it was delicious. When I asked about it, Adrian just gave a slight smile and said it was a private recipe and wouldn't reveal anything else. I wasn't the only one. Every guest was obsessed with that main dish. Adrian must have been very confident in his cooking because he prepared a massive amount. Plate after plate of meat was brought out. We ate, talked, and danced until the sun almost came up. The strange thing was that after that night, I completely lost contact with Adrian. He didn't reply to my texts, and his phone was always unreachable. I didn't worry too much, though, because I knew he traveled a lot for business. I assumed he had just gone overseas. Almost a year passed. While scrolling through social media, I suddenly saw a news headline that was being shared everywhere. Wanted. Suspect in suburban murder and body disposal. I was curious because the murder happened in the same neighborhood where Adrian lived. When I scrolled down to see the suspect's photo, I nearly fell out of my chair. It was Adrian. I swear I had to rub my eyes several times. I read the information and looked at the photo over and over again. I even went to the official website of the National News Agency to confirm it wasn't a fake story. It was real. I couldn't believe that a gentle, quiet, and successful man like Adrian could be a murderer. I read every detail of the article in the comments below. Someone mentioned that Adrian used to participate in disturbing online forums. I searched his name along with those keywords, followed a few anonymous accounts, and eventually discovered a private group. The members discussed sick fantasies involving violence and pleasure. It seemed they were all men. I started tracking old posts and found an account with a username identical to Adrian's Instagram handle. I was almost certain it was him. Adrian had been messaging another user for a long time, planning an in-person meeting. According to the discussions in that forum, the person he planned to meet was the victim. This victim was fully aware of what was going to happen. He had actually consented to being harmed to satisfy his own twisted experience. I was absolutely shocked by Adrian's true nature and the warped, depraved mindset of both him and the victim. But the true horror didn't stop there. I found a post by Adrian in that group where he described how he processed the body after the crime. He wrote about how to remove the scent and how to season the ingredients to turn them into elaborate dishes. He wrote about the thrill he felt inviting his closest friends over to eat the meat without them having any idea what it was. At that moment, my entire reality collapsed. The smell of the food from that housewarming party rushed back into my nose. I remembered the taste of the tender, rich meat that I had praised so highly. My heart hammered against my ribs, my hands shook, and I couldn't pull my eyes away from the screen. I felt my stomach twist violently. My head spun, and a wave of nausea hit me instantly. The meal I had complimented over and over again. That's what it was. I remembered eating so much that night. I even went back for seconds. This story is inspired by a real case. Following images and videos shared on social media, the police in Lang Son Province, Vietnam, investigated and arrested 57-year-old Duan Van Sang for murder. The victim, Nguyen Xuan Dat, had known Sang since 2020 through a private online group centered around twisted obsessions with the human body. After committing the crime, the perpetrator committed the barbaric act of dismembering and cooking the victim's body to completely destroy evidence. Despite his sophisticated attempts to cover up the crime scene, the heinous act was discovered. On November 29th, the investigating agency issued a decision to prosecute and an arrest warrant for Don Van Sang to be severely punished according to the law. My name is Chloe. It has been exactly 10 years since this happened, and this is the first time I have been brave enough to tell the story. I was 22 years old and had just moved to Chicago. It was a completely strange city to me, and I was there to start a new job. Because I was so lonely, I posted an ad on Craigslist, hoping to find someone to talk to and become friends with. I quickly got a reply from a woman named Megan. She was 5 years older than me, and the way she spoke was very sophisticated and sympathetic. After I shared my feelings, Megan said she understood perfectly because she had gone through the exact same thing. She said she wanted to help me adjust to the city and told me to text her whenever I needed anything. After talking for nearly 2 weeks, Megan invited me to her apartment for dinner and a movie. I happily agreed, and even prepared some snacks and a small gift to say thank you. Megan's apartment building was located in a very secluded area, and from the outside, it looked quite old. When I arrived, I texted her to let her know I was there, but she didn't reply. I walked down the hallway looking for the unit number, and the further I went, the more I noticed how strangely quiet the place was. Megan's apartment was at the very end of the hall. When I reached it, I saw that the door was cracked open. I stood at the entrance and called out her name, but no one answered. Just as I was hesitating and about to leave, a woman's voice drifted out from the inside. It sounded a bit raspy, but it was gentle enough. "Just come in, Chloe," Megan called out again, saying she was busy preparing things in the kitchen and told me to make myself at home. I walked further into the apartment, but things felt weird. There was no smell of food. Instead, the air was thick with a sharp chemical odor, like something had just been scrubbed down. The space was bizarre, filled with busts, empty picture frames, and large objects covered in white sheets, making it look like a storage warehouse. Suddenly, I heard a loud click behind me. The front door had been locked. When I turned around, a tall woman was blocking the exit. It only took a few seconds for me to realize something was very wrong. Heavy makeup couldn't hide a scruffy beard. The hairline was completely crooked. The shoulders were too broad, and the hands were huge with knobby knuckles. It wasn't Megan. It was a man dressed as a woman. He flashed a twisted smile and pulled a long, shiny knife from his waistband. He began mumbling about how he was going to use my body to create a perfect work of art. The most terrifying part was that when he spoke, his voice was exactly like the woman's voice I had heard earlier. He stepped closer, violently grabbed my purse, and threw it onto the coffee table along with his house keys. He started inspecting me like a piece of merchandise, muttering that I had a few flaws, but that he would help fix them. The moment he turned his back to grab something, I remembered the Apple Watch on my wrist. With my hands shaking behind my back, I secretly activated the Find My iPhone feature. My phone started blaring a loud, high-pitched alarm from inside my bag on the table. It startled him. He turned back and glared at me threateningly. I gathered all my courage, looked him right in the eye, and lied clearly. I told him my boyfriend had tracked my location and that since I wasn't answering my texts, he had definitely already called the police. The man looked panicked for a split second. He rushed toward the table to grab the phone and silence the alarm. At that exact moment, I grabbed the vase off his shelf and used every ounce of strength I had to smash it over the back of his head. He was dazed and stumbled forward. Without wasting a single second, I snatched my purse and his keys and bolted for the door. My hands were fumbling, and it felt like forever before I could get the key into the lock. I felt like if I had been 1 second slower, he would have caught me. I sprinted down the fire escape stairs, not daring to wait for the elevator. Once I was safe in my car with the doors locked, I drove straight to the nearest police station in a state of total shock. But when the police went back to the apartment with me, the place was completely empty. That creep had vanished, as if he had never been there. The actual owner of the apartment was a woman traveling abroad. She had no idea someone had broken in and had been squatting in her home for weeks. Because the building had no hallway cameras and the area was so deserted, the police couldn't identify him. I deleted all my apps, reported the Craigslist account, and hoped it was over. But it wasn't. A few days later, I started receiving stalker photos of myself walking to work and entering my apartment. The following morning, I found a sticky note on my front door with scribbled handwriting. "I've guessed 2 digits of your door code already." I called the police in a panic, but they said they couldn't do anything because there was no evidence of a break-in. I felt completely helpless and alone. That very night, I woke up to the sound of someone repeatedly typing the wrong code into my door lock. I called the police again, but once more, the bastard vanished without a trace before they arrived. The next morning, I didn't wait around for anything else. I packed my bags, broke my lease, quit my job, and left Chicago that same day. Since then, I have never messaged a stranger online again. Being a little lonely is much better than giving danger a chance to find you. My name is Jonathan. My family lived in an isolated house out in the suburbs. The house was surrounded by woods, with only a small gravel driveway leading out to the main road. The afternoon I got home was the exact moment the storm hit. Even though the local authorities had issued a severe weather warning, the sheer destructive power of it was still beyond my imagination. The wind howled relentlessly, and hail pounded against the roof and windows, creating a deafening racket. Luckily, my wife and kids were already visiting my mother-in-law's house, using the trip to stay clear of the storm. I cracked open a can of beer and sat in the living room, tracking the weather updates on TV. It was just me and my dog, Cooper, inside the house. Cooper was always terrified of thunder. Normally, the moment the wind picked up, he would run around looking for me. But tonight, after watching TV for a while, I suddenly realized I couldn't hear him anywhere. I called out his name a few times, but there was only silence. Right at that moment, the news channel suddenly cut to an emergency broadcast. A violent prison break just occurred at the state penitentiary 10 miles away. The notorious killer known as the Block C Monster has escaped. He was last seen hiding out in the wooded areas near suburban residential homes. The exact second the TV flashed the escaped convict's mugshot, a loud explosion boomed outside in the yard. The entire house plunged into total darkness. I rushed to grab my phone to use the flashlight, but the screen only flickered weakly once and died from a drained battery. I stood in the pitch black for a few seconds, waiting for my eyes to adjust. The storm outside grew even more violent, making the whole house shake. Then, cutting through the roaring wind, I heard a different sound. It was the chime of an iMessage notification, and it came from the second floor. The first thought that flashed through my mind was that my wife was texting my kid's iPad because she couldn't get through to my phone. I fumbled around to grab the emergency flashlight next to the TV stand and quickly headed up the stairs. When I reached the hallway, I froze. The master bedroom door was cracked open. I remembered very clearly that I had shut it tight after changing my clothes earlier. Just as my hand touched the doorknob, another sound made my blood run cold. The sound of heavy footsteps moving right behind the staircase behind me. But before I could react, the footsteps abruptly stopped. The space fell back into a heavy silence. In a state of pure panic, I ducked into the bedroom and backed up tight against the doorframe. I aimed my flashlight toward the stairs, trying to see what was out there, but nothing moved. When I swept my flashlight across the bedroom to find the iPad, my heart skipped a beat. I realized I wasn't alone in the room. A thin man with pale white skin was standing in the corner. He had a tight grip on Cooper. He looked up when my flashlight beam hit him, and I instantly recognized him. It was Ven. 2 years ago, he and I were involved in a horrific car accident. That tragedy took the lives of his wife and child. The accident was entirely Ven's fault, and the court cleared me of all charges. I did nothing wrong, but it was clear that his hatred for me had never faded. He looked at me, letting out a smug, satisfied smirk. Before I could process what was happening, a loud voice shouted from behind me, ordering me to freeze. A large, dark figure rushed straight into the room with a gun aimed right at us. In that chaotic split second, I was certain it was Ven's partner. I swung my heavy flashlight violently toward the dark figure to defend myself. Instantly, a loud blast rang out. My body jolted as a bullet slammed into my shoulder, followed by another one ripping into my stomach. Excruciating pain washed over me, and the room spun. I collapsed onto the floor. As I lay there gasping in pain, I saw Ven calmly let Cooper go. I heard the man who just shot me shout into his radio, "Target is down." That was when the horrifying truth hit me. The man who shot me wasn't Ven's accomplice at all. He was a police officer hunting down the escaped convict. When I turned my head to look at Ven, he was playing the part perfectly, acting like an innocent homeowner who had just escaped the hands of a dangerous criminal. Shouts and footsteps began to echo all around me. Officers called out to secure the scene and demanded an ambulance immediately. All those voices slowly drifted away. The last things I could sense before losing consciousness were the metallic smell of blood, Cooper's weak whimpering, and Ven's face hovering just behind the police officers. He was looking down at me with pure satisfaction. Then I drifted away into the dark. I'm Laura, an elementary school teacher. I teach kids from about 7 to 11 years old. Teaching really is a special job. There are amazing moments that make you want to cry with happiness, but there are also terrible moments that haunt you for life. When you work with children, sometimes you witness miracles, but also tragedies that outsiders can hardly imagine. There are things you learn that will literally stick with you. At the beginning of that school year, a little boy named Ali Hassan transferred into my class. Ali was from a faraway country, didn't speak English, and was very awkward communicating at first. He studied extra hard. Just a few weeks later, he started to fit in. Ali's true personality slowly came out. He was a curious, happy, and friendly boy. Ali grew up in a very conservative culture where people were strongly against anything related to ghosts, witches, or the supernatural, and they did not celebrate Halloween. When September turned into October, the whole school started decorating for Halloween. Items like skeletons, vampires, spider webs, and so on appeared everywhere. The scale at which we celebrated this holiday made Ali quite scared. I explained to him that it was just pretend, that we were turning scary things into something fun. When he understood, Ali started to get interested. Luckily, his classmates were very kind. They welcomed Ali warmly and voluntarily taught him all about Halloween. Of all the creatures that typically appear during Halloween, Ali was especially fascinated by Dracula. I asked why, and he said he liked the idea of staying up late and being able to turn into a bat and fly. It was lovely to see Ali connect with his friends and overcome his fear like that. That year's Halloween fell on a Friday. In the afternoon after lunch, the class had a costume party. We wore masks, put on makeup, dressed up as monsters, and had a very fun Halloween celebration. Ali wore the plastic fangs I bought him and draped a black trash bag for a cape. All afternoon, he snuck up on his friends, jumped out, and hissed like a vampire. The whole class laughed out loud, and once again, Ali was a real joy to watch. When school ended, he insisted on walking home in his costume. At the time, I simply thought he loved the holiday too much, completely unaware that it would lead to a tragedy. By Monday morning, I was excited to see if Ali was still playing vampire, but he didn't come to class. The principal called the family. They said Ali was sick. The next morning, Ali still hadn't returned, so the principal called again to check in. Their English wasn't very good, but they tried to convey that Ali was still resting in bed and would be back soon. After Ali missed the entire week, and the first 2 days of the following week, we started to worry. The principal called a third time and asked if they had taken Ali to the doctor. They said no, but the reason for this was vague. Social services got involved, and things started to get serious. 2 weeks after Ali first missed school, a social worker visited the house. Ali's parents again said their son was sick. The social worker asked if she could come in and see Ali, but they refused. The social worker warned that she would come back with the police and they would be arrested if they interfered. But Ali's parents didn't react much. I'm not sure if they didn't understand or didn't believe what the social worker said. It took 3 weeks from Ali's absence for a team of professionals to finally gain access to the house, and the scene they saw inside was terrifying. Ali was lying in bed, just skin and bones. There were signs that the family had tried to care for him, but Ali was critically ill. The boy was taken to the hospital immediately. Doctors quickly discovered the reason. Ali had not been fed for almost 3 weeks, only given a little water, just enough to sustain life. This was a case of starvation. While Ali received medical care, the police arrested his parents. The officers described Ali's parents as kind, hardworking, and sincere people. They were very distressed to see their son so ill. However, when asked why they had let their child become so emaciated, they seemed confused, not understanding what the problem was. In their view, they had done exactly what a local holy man advised: to feed Ali as little as possible to starve the evil spirit that had possessed the boy's body. They fully believed their son was possessed because of Ali's fascination and special interest in vampires. By the 3rd week, when Ali started to become tragically thin, they even arranged for the holy man to perform an exorcism. But according to them, it didn't work, so the starvation regimen continued. They didn't take their son to the doctor. They didn't listen to the school. They only believed the person they considered holy. Hearing this whole story was the most horrifying and shocking experience of my career, and it still haunts me today. I ask myself, did I contribute to this tragedy? I introduced Ali to Halloween, encouraged him to explore scary things, thinking I was helping him fit in. But in the eyes of his parents, that was proof that their son was possessed by a demon. I didn't foresee the cultural difference, that what I thought would enrich a life could become a deep hole that swallowed an innocent child like that. Ali's parents eventually went to jail. Ali was moved to live with a foster family elsewhere. I never got to see little Ali again. Ali's parents loved their child, but they didn't believe in the natural curiosity of a child or the explanation from the school. Instead, they easily trusted the words of a stranger simply because that person claimed to be holy. They looked at their son with cultural fear. They didn't see a boy happily exploring a new world, but only the sign of a demon. Sometimes, love combined with ignorance can lead to devastating consequences. Around the spring of 2021, I started learning about the cryptocurrency Luna and the crypto market in general. In May 2021, a friend in the scene gave me a heads up. He told me that Luna, a crypto coin, had skyrocketed from 50 cents to $6 per token just a few months earlier. I did some research and learned that Luna was a reserve asset for Terra USD. This was an algorithmic stablecoin designed to stay at a 1-to-1 ratio with the US dollar. Basically, Terra USD was backed by tons of investors pouring millions into the company that created it, making it seem like a stable coin that couldn't possibly fail. Luna was the asset whose price could fluctuate, but because it was tied to Terra USD, it was practically guaranteed to increase in value over time. My friend waited for a small dip and bought into Luna at $5 per token. Just over a month later, that token price had more than quadrupled to $20.71. After a period of stability, Luna took a small hit, dropping to about $5 in May 2021. This was when my friend messaged me, saying it was the perfect time to buy in. He was practically 99% confident that Luna would recover strongly because of its link to Terra USD. His confidence is what convinced me, and I joked, if it crashes, we crash together. I had a total of $490 saved up, and I bought 100 Luna tokens at $4.81 each. My girlfriend at the time and my best friend Chris both thought I was insane for spending almost $500 on invisible coins. But then they slowly started to change their minds when, by August of the same year, Luna's value had climbed from $10 to $20, then $30 per token. This was especially true for Chris. I opened my crypto wallet on the investment app and showed Chris the amount of Luna I owned and their current value. When he saw how much the investment had grown, Chris curiously asked if I could convert that money to cash anytime I wanted. I explained that technically, I needed to sell those Luna tokens to another buyer in the market. However, with Luna's price surging, finding a buyer was easy, and the app I used could automatically execute the sale and transfer the money to my bank account quickly. I even had the chance to make $2,900 in profit in less than an hour. Chris went from thinking this was a scam to seeing the potential of crypto. I was honest that it was basically gambling, but Luna was the safest bet at the time, with long-term stability potential. For the rest of 2021, Luna's value kept rising, going from $30 to $60, then $93. I always advised Chris to follow the market, understand the system, and patiently wait for a dip so he could buy in. In late January 2022, Luna dropped sharply to about $45 per token. I called Chris and told him it was the perfect time. I guided him through setting up a wallet, and Chris decided to buy 300 tokens. I was a little shocked because I had only invested $4,000, while Chris, who wasn't wealthy, invested almost $14,000. Just over a month later, Luna had risen from around $50 to over $100 per token, and we believed Chris had made the right choice. Chris's investment was now worth almost $30,000, double his original money. By early April 2022, Luna hit almost $120 per token, and Chris believed we would be millionaires by the end of the year. I tried to pull Chris back to reality, saying I planned to sell my tokens as soon as they hit the $150 mark to lock in a massive profit. If Chris did the same, he would triple his investment. Chris was thrilled, thinking he would get rich because of Luna. I felt proud that I had not only made money, but also helped my best friend. Just a few days after our conversation, Luna started to fall sharply. In about 2 weeks, The price dropped from $120 to around $75 per token. Chris called me, and I reassured him with my usual line, "Every drop is just taking a breather before a new high." Sure enough, the next day, Luna rose from $75 to $90, then stabilized at around $95. In early May 2022, I remember checking my wallet once and saw Luna had dropped below $70, but I wasn't worried, believing it would soon bounce back as usual. Everything became a blur after that. May 11th, 2022 is a day that will forever be etched in my mind. I realized my whole world had been completely turned upside down. In just about an hour, Luna had plummeted from almost $70 to $33 per token. A few hours later, it sank to $16 and then to $13. At that point, my head was spinning. I had to take deep breaths to keep myself from throwing up or passing out. I immediately checked forums and message boards for clues. I prayed it was just a glitch or a miscalculation in the blockchain, but I found the opposite. Luna had completely collapsed and wasn't coming back. When I woke up the next day, my phone had about 50 missed calls and nearly 24 messages from Chris. He was in full-blown panic mode. His messages escalated from, "Did you see this?" to "Pick up the phone, you jerk." I called him back, but the call went to voicemail. About 20 minutes later, Chris rang the buzzer to my apartment. When I looked at the monitor screen, I saw Chris looked almost exhausted, not angry. I planned to let him in, make Chris a cup of coffee, and knew we were about to have an incredibly tense conversation. However, as I was about to open the door, Chris punched the door and hissed, "Open up." His voice was slurred like he was drunk. I suddenly felt a chill, afraid that a drunk Chris would smash up my apartment. He punched the door hard again and yelled, "Open this damn door, we need to talk." I spoke through the intercom, suggesting he go home and sleep it off. Then we could talk on the phone in the morning. I even offered to call him an Uber as an apology for not answering his calls. While I was explaining that I was sick, Chris started kicking the door repeatedly, each kick getting stronger. He screamed in a drunken rage that he would kill me when he broke the door down. I tried to explain why Luna collapsed, but he didn't care anymore and kept screaming. He repeated over and over, "Open the door, James. Open the door." I was afraid I might have to use violence to defend myself against a close friend. I knew I should call the police, but couldn't do that to him. "Please, man, let's talk when you've really calmed down." Chris only stopped when my neighbor shouted at him to quit it. I saw Chris raise his hands in the air and back away from the door. I assumed the neighbor had a gun pointed at him. Chris then stumbled away. The next day, I tried calling and texting Chris, but he didn't answer. I reached out on Instagram, and he had blocked me. I asked a mutual friend to pass along a message, but there was no response. I thought he would be mad for a week or two at most, because sooner or later, he had to realize it wasn't my fault. But the heartbreaking thing is, that never happened. From Chris's point of view, I was either too stupid and cost him his money, or I was part of a scam and stole his money. Either way, he was done with me. That night he screamed behind that locked door was the last time we ever spoke. I didn't throw away a laptop holding nearly $1 billion, but I threw away a friendship, and that friendship was worth more than any amount of money could buy. I am Margaret, 62 years old. I live alone in Port Clinton, Ohio, a small town on the shores of Lake Erie. Winters here are severe. Everyone in the town knows each other. I worked as a social worker for the public school system and have been retired for 3 years. I live alone in the house, My husband left me before he passed away. The house next door is where a boy named Liam lived with his mother, a woman I disliked. The reason why will become clear in the story I'm about to tell. I often saw Liam sitting on the front steps, wearing a thin jacket in the sub-zero cold, gazing into the distance. He was a freshman in high school, 14 years old, but small for his age, like a 7-year-old boy. I observed him and suspected he might be autistic, as he would sometimes repeat phrases or stare at a point in space for a long time. But he was gentle, polite, and always smiled widely whenever I brought over cookies. His mother was different. She often yelled at him, leaving Liam hungry and cold. I remember one day in mid-December, when the snow was falling heavily. I saw Liam walk out of his house, wearing a thin coat, his face flushed and his eyes swollen. The boy was clearly unwell. I waved, but he didn't see me. He walked slowly to the bus stop, his shoulders slumped. I wondered why his mother would let him go to school in such a poor condition. I watched until Liam got on the bus, then went back inside to make coffee. Around 11 a.m., I saw the school bus stop in front of the house. Liam stepped off, looking even worse than he had that morning. He staggered toward the door. Liam knocked several times, but there was no response. I was about to go out, but my phone rang. It was my daughter calling. I answered, talking for a few minutes. When I looked out the window again, Liam was gone. I assumed the boy had managed to get inside the house. I returned to my cleaning and baked some extra cookies, planning to take them over to Liam. That afternoon, I knocked on their door, but no one answered. The house was completely silent. The next day, I didn't see Liam go to school as usual. It wasn't until the end of the day that I learned Liam was missing. His mother called the police, saying he hadn't returned home since the previous day. The police came to ask questions, and I recounted everything I had witnessed. In the days that followed, the whole town participated in the search for Liam. We searched the park, the lakeside, and the woods near the town. I joined every search effort for Liam, constantly praying for his safe return. But weeks passed. Christmas came and went in silence. The new year began with no news of Liam. The police speculated that the boy might have taken a train to Cleveland or Columbus, looking for his older sister or another relative. They suggested Liam might be living on the streets or have been taken in by someone. But I always had a strong feeling that something terrible had happened. In mid-February, a real estate agent went to check on the abandoned house at the end of my block, preparing it for an open house viewing. He reported a strange odor coming from the fireplace. A chimney sweep was called in. When he shone his flashlight down the chimney, he immediately called the police. The police arrived and had to tear down a section of the wall to retrieve what was inside. It was Liam's body. Only after the police intervention did the cruel truth about the woman Liam called Mother gradually surface. Liam had been suffering from a severe flu that day. He had a high fever, was shivering, his face was red, and he was dizzy. But his mother still forced him to go to school as usual, just because she didn't want him home, bothering her. It was the last day of school before the long holiday break. Perhaps she just wanted to get him out of the house for her peace. By mid-morning, Liam's condition worsened. The school called and requested that she pick him up, but she didn't answer. They called again repeatedly. She refused and eventually turned off her phone completely. Finally, the school had no choice but to send Liam home early by bus. Upon returning home, Liam found the door locked from the inside. His mother was not home. He didn't have a key, and it was bitterly cold outside, snowing non-stop. The police believe Liam waited for a while, then walked around the block trying to find a way in. He eventually came to the abandoned house at the end of the street. Perhaps in his fatigue and despair, he thought the chimney was the only entrance. Perhaps he remembered Christmas cartoons, thinking it was a way to get inside, to shelter temporarily until his mother returned. But that was a mistake he couldn't undo. The chimney narrowed near the fireplace. He got stuck in the narrow section, unable to climb up or slide down. He likely cried for help, but the empty house, thick walls, and heavy snow swallowed every sound. Liam died of hypothermia. The medical examiner said he might have died within a few hours. When the news spread, the whole town was submerged in grief. It was unbelievable that during all the weeks we searched everywhere, the boy was just 3 houses away from his own home. It's horrifying to think about what Liam must have endured up until his final moment. The school organized a week of psychological counseling. They held a pink day to commemorate Liam by having everyone wear a pink ribbon. Pink was Liam's favorite color. His mother was arrested for child neglect and abuse leading to death. She didn't cry during the trial. She just sat there, staring down at the table, saying nothing. I sat in the courtroom, looked at her, and felt a profound anger. Liam was truly unlucky to have such an irresponsible and cold-hearted mother. But I also felt guilt. I knew Liam was being mistreated and needed help, but I didn't do enough. Liam needed someone to step up and say, "This child is being abused," but I didn't do that. That is how the small town of Port Clinton began, the new year in tragedy and sorrow. That house remains empty to this day. Liam's mother is in prison, and no one wants to buy the house. The house at the end of the street is the same. No one wants to live in the house where a child died. Every time it snows, I think of Liam. I wonder if I had done things differently, if I had called Child Protective Services sooner, if I had opened my door that day instead of answering the phone. Things would have been different.